to anyone who is joining us from elsewhere, I apologise for the technical difficulties, which have given us a rather longer lunch break than I anticipated. However, we now are continuing with our agenda with part 3, which is strategic matters. And in item 3.1, we have our regular focus on equality and diversity. And actually, we've got the 2 regular items that sit within this that we've been receiving. And it would be very helpful to have some feedback on those. However, I think we have the need for some kind of broader discussion as well about how best to use this opportunity. I know that Tina and myself felt early on that we do need to make sure that we cover equality and diversity regularly. It's got very easy just for us to overlook that. And so this is how this started on the agenda. But the equality and diversity issues that matter to us are obviously wider than the 2 particular important items that are down. It includes Welsh language and international recruitment and access and a whole range of other things. So we need to have that wider discussion. But in the meantime, perhaps we could just start with some feedback on the 2 items we have got, which is differential attainment to start with. So
I can kick off on this, although it isn't confined any longer to medicine. The first thing is that it's now a defined strategic objective. Previously, we had Colette doing a very able job, Colette McAnally doing a very able job in chairing the differential attainment group. But because it's now become a strategic objective and more health board wide, it was felt that we probably needed to have a more senior SRO, and Kirsty's that person to take this forward on a multi-professional level with me as the exec lead for it. So that's the sort of organizational change that's happened since the last meeting. In terms of differential attainment itself, I'll probably come to Tom in a moment to talk about the medical side in more detail. But we are looking at linking with the GMC to see what data they can provide us with, which will help us in understanding the level of differential treatment that's going on at the moment. So certainly from a point of view of appointments, progression and referral, we're hoping to get further data from them that will help us in basically seeing how well we're doing or how badly we're doing. So that's the specific issue about differential attainment within some of our areas in HIW. There is, alongside that, work going on from all the deaneries and from and input from Lisa's areas, because the undergraduate procurement has quite a few bits of data being requested as part of their quality work, which looks at the very things that we would look at in differential attainment. So I think that's where we are, and that's where we're heading. Tom, did you want to say anything more on that? And Lisa later.
I don't think there's a huge amount. I mean, I think the committee is aware of the work that's going on in medicine, and differential attainment is one specific subgroup of the wider equality, diversity, inclusion issues, and it started looking at exam pass rates, ARCP outcomes, and satisfaction from training, etc. So we continue to monitor those specific parameters with the GMC and have a number of strategies in place really to address some of these issues, and improving the data we collect about the diversity of our panels that make judgments around progression of training, making sure these are reflective of the trainee group. It is a much more complex area because the proportion of international graduates, who clearly are an important arm of this issue, but need to be looked at perhaps through a different lens to the UK minority ethnic groups who've gone through the same education system. But we are putting a lot in place for the international medical graduates coming to the country at the start of their program, so that we're not waiting to the first hurdle point to see them fail. We're trying to give them enhanced preparation, both in terms of the cultural aspect of coming to a new country, as well as the specifics around training. So there's lots of detail, I guess, in terms of the work streams that are going on to address this. It's going to be a long time before the metrics that actually measure the success of these sort of programs take a long time to come to fruition. But in all our areas in medicine, they're well-established programs of work looking at the differential attainment. We've also looked at differential experience, because that's something that's been becoming an increasing issue, that certain groups, often around ethnicity, feel that they're having a different experience of training. So we've been doing some surveys to look at that and try and identify where those issues are. Interestingly, they do correlate quite closely with the data that we collect through our quality management processes, which we update you on, which is reassuring from one aspect, in that we're largely cited on where those issues are. So I'll pause there, because I don't think I have anything more than that to say, other than we will be continuing with the streams of work that we've put in place to date, and there are new ones that are coming in all the time, including an extended shadowing opportunity for foundation doctors coming into the system for the first time from overseas, which aligns with what I was saying before. I'll pause there.
Thank you, Tom. I'm going to come back, but I just asked if Kirsty wants to make any contribution.
So thank you, Chair. So I've come to this a little bit late, but I was aware of the differential attainment from my time at the GDC, when the GDC was looking at it. The GMC and medical profession are streets ahead, I think, of certainly dentistry and most of the other healthcare professions. But the work that we're going to start looking at, we're going to put forward looking at differential attainment, differential experience, so we can start to try and pull together some of the data flows and capture how we're capturing that information and that experience across all of the professions. The medical group that Colette has very ably led will continue, because they are much further down the road on this journey, and we can use the learning to inform us. But I think for us, it's a starting point of putting a multi-professional group together of leads to try and identify the data capture, engaging with the HEIs to get underneath some of the information there. So that's the direction of travel we're going in.
Thank you.
Could I add something, Chair? I should have mentioned earlier, is that we also have had the first meeting of the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Steering Group, which Julie Rogers and myself co-chair. And what we'll be reporting to that is the EDI network. And one of the roles of the EDI network is to be implementing the issues relating to EDI in the annual plan, the strategic equality plan, the race equality action plan, and included in the strategic equality plan is a large element of differential attainment that comes underneath that. So it is embedded into our work plan as an organisation. So I think as part of that, I think ultimately it'll form part of our performance reporting if we can start getting data.
Yes.
So I think that's where we are with this.
I think that's the big question for me. It's about how we can start to get the package of monitoring metrics that tell the story at the headline level.
Yeah.
But I'm sure Tina will want to make some comments or observations. Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot, Tina, because your hand isn't up. But
thanks, Chair. I think certainly in the pre-meeting we had, there was a query as to whether we keep this on the agenda, because it is an organisational wide and a board responsibility. But I do think it's vitally important that we do keep it on the agenda. One of the things I was going to ask Push is, because we've now got the group within HIW, I just wonder whether we look at the membership of our committees or our consultation groups to see if the equality, diversity and inclusion agenda features in membership of those groups as well, so that we actively can demonstrate that we're collating information about when we're seeking views on our educational programme provision of what we're doing, so that there is that cross-reference. I just wonder whether that was on the agenda of that committee.
So as I say, we've only had the first meeting where we've looked at the draft terms of reference in detail. So we haven't had our first formal meeting. Did you mean which specific meetings, terms of reference were you talking about? The ones related to ones I just talked about, or?
Yeah, and the committees that we set up, and when we're doing consultations, that it becomes a significant feature, because sometimes people come to meetings. I would like to see that equality, diversity, inclusion agenda become part of all our consultation process to make sure we get a wide network of. That's how you get the information coming back. And it would be useful to have a discussion around how best to do that.
Yeah. So we could potentially, I'll speak to Julie about this, and we can come back to you on how we make sure that we get proper representation for those. I think the EDI network does have quite a wide representation, but I'm not sure they've had their first meeting yet, because, as you know, we've had some changes of staff, and Rhiannon Windsor has arrived in the Workforce and OD Directorate to have a lead on this, and she only started 1st of December. So she's going to be leading on the EDI network, and I think the first meeting of that is yet to happen. So the membership of that, I think, is quite wide. It includes,
I think that's helpful, because one of the areas that Ruth, I have spoken about previously is I do from time to time meet up with groups of individuals who are eager to get onto the professional register within Wales and are employed in, I would say, healthcare support worker grades across the professions, knowing that they've got an international recruitment status, but are having difficulty to get either through the English language or even access to enable them to get onto the register. And subsequently, they're then employed at bands 2 to 3 to 4 of the healthcare support worker role, yet still using their clinical domain skills. And it would be useful to try and see how we might access that information, because those are individuals who technically should be enabled to get on to the register, a professional register, and practice at the level that they're skilled with from their own home country. And I think that type of information, when you're meeting people like that, and I know, Push, I've introduced you to one medical practitioner who, from a refugee perspective, but I think I could pick up on issues like renal dialysis. I do know that there are a number of healthcare support workers working in a renal dialysis unit that actually are qualified renal nurses, but can't get onto the register and being employed at a band 3, but actually practicing at a band 5. So those kinds of things, again, go back to the attainment. And I think, I don't know how best we could actually gain that information from across Wales, but I think that's part of the discussion that I'd like our consultation groups to look at.
Can I bring in Lisa, because we have a hand up but no picture. So your hand's working, Lisa.
Angie and Norm actually off mute as well. So yes, apologies, I have no idea what's going on. Actually, obviously George, actually the spook is working actually on this system. So effectively, in response to that, Tina, I totally agree with what you're saying. It's about actually how do we capture that, because in response to what the previous requests have been from this committee. I have gone to Welsh Government to ask those questions as to how many people are waiting. And actually, we've had that feedback, and actually sort of made sure that those people are streamed in. It's probably, as you're saying, Tina, is how do we capture those that we don't know about? And that's the issue of how does that information get into the system so that we can enable actually those individuals to come forward. I think that's the challenge, and we need to probably look at. I haven't got the answers because it is quite a disparate number of people in a variety of settings. So how do we raise the information, raise the profile of what they can do, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to a group of 15 and 10 of them were in that domain, you know, so, and I wasn't alone. There were a couple of other people in the group with me. So I think it would be very, very helpful to be able to look at how we might conduct a consultation or an engagement process so that we can pick up individuals who could actually go through a shortened programme, get onto the register, and then realise their career aspirations, but also become part of the Welsh community in a true sense. Thanks.
Is there more to add about the refugee training programme?
It's very similar, isn't it?
From anyone?
So for that particular doctor that Tina mentioned to me, I did tell her that we could provide her with support from our ward programme. I really don't know if she ever took it up, but she did. Oh, good. But that continues, that programme, as and when we identify individuals who would benefit from it. But you'd think that there's some skills that are being provided there, which would be, you know, certainly language skills, which would be something that potentially would be something that could be done a bit more widely. But we haven't had the same sort of interest that we've had for doctors, for other professionals from Welsh Government is my understanding. So I don't know if that's something that I've got a feeling that there was a question asked about this with Lisa's predecessors, but Lisa is obviously more close to this from a nursing perspective.
Can we just well, thank you for the feedback, but can we just move this now to how we could benefit from keeping this item on the agenda, and in fact how we can contribute and help. We need to move it on. I'm not sure that we can have that discussion now, and we maybe need to have it out of here.
So perhaps actually, Ruth, actually what we need to do is actually taking up actually what Push is actually saying. This is an issue that needs to feed into the EDI agenda in order that they can take this piece of work forward to identify, as Tina said, you know, or conduct a consultation on sort of how we can establish, you know, who these people are, where they work, etc. Because until we do that, and actually we open that up, I don't think we will ever get the answer. So perhaps, my suggestion would be to recommend this action to that EDI group.
Right. Well, I think that would be very helpful. I think also we do need to have some
Pushes that fine.
Discussion about the issues that are not on here. And for example, Welsh language and the metrics that will in time come together to support monitoring of this. And at the moment, you know, it's very useful to have feedback, but we don't seem to have any handle on assurance around it. And I think over time we need the tools to do that. But that is a longer discussion than we have time available for now. So, excuse me, can we leave it at that? That we will give this some thought between now and the March meeting, and come back with some ideas at the March meeting about the value of keeping an item on equality and diversity as a standing item.
I'm just thinking out loud here. I'm just wondering if we need to think about how we would approach an increased offering for some of the individuals that Tina is describing that she meets, and perhaps signposting that we need to take this through either as an addendum to our education training plan or part of it, or whether we need to go to them and see what direction do Welsh Government want to go, because I think we can have some ideas, but equally I think we need to have their backing, especially if it's becoming a multi-professional ask, both to address training needs and so on and so forth. I know that the Chief Medical Officer is aware of the refugee training that goes on for doctors, but whether the Chief Nursing Officer is aware of the same sorts of needs for nursing, and maybe the leads for other professions are aware of the opportunities that might be there. I just wonder if we've got to make those links with Welsh Government and ask the question of them. I don't know what you think, Lisa. Your hand's up and I can't see you, so I don't know what your body language is.
Yeah, you can't see me nodding. I think you're absolutely right, Push. Actually, this is important actually to get involved, the involvement actually of the Welsh Government, and I know our Chief Nursing Officer would be keen on this, and I'm sure she's going to make this equality and diversity actually one of her key priorities going forward. So it is about actually how we take that into the internal groups actually within HEIW to look at that. I didn't know whether David had any comments to make about the Welsh language aspect as well.
Could you make some inquiries and we can discuss it further before March?
I think it's about actually referring it into our EDI group to begin with to make those inquiries. Otherwise, actually everything goes round a circle. But actually, we need a point of contact to hold this ring, don't we?
Well, if we can leave it there,
Okay.
and as I say, come back to it. Not about the detail, but about the how we can add value here. Then I think we should move on.
Can I just make one point then? I just wonder whether it's worthwhile if Push and Lisa and myself can have a conversation outside of this meeting where I look at some of the representative groups or charitable groups where these individuals may be engaged with, to see whether it's worthwhile inviting them to the EDI group, see how they can open it up a little bit.
And I think there are two things going on here. One is the more focused issues around the needs of individuals, and the other is the big concern for us, which is how can this committee best add value in this context. So, as far as I'm concerned, Tina, if you know that conversation would certainly possibly be very helpful in the first, but I think it's another discussion to be had, and that's what I'm very keen to see that we do. So let's leave it there and move on, because we've got another important item to turn to now, and we won't be leaving this, it'll come back. David, we haven't any governance matters for this committee this time, so we can go straight on to part 5, which is for information and noting. But we have a really important paper on this section, which is an update on phase 2 of the strategic review. And the paper that we've had is really helpful. And it just underlines what an enormously complex process the phase 2 part of this project is going to be. Lisa, are you in a position to introduce this paper? Or?
I can. So, and I've got Martin actually, who is my senior responsible officer actually on this particular phase 2 as well. So what we've actually provided with you is an update actually since our we last updated you in September, but obviously many things have happened as since then. And actually, one of the key aspects is actually really that Martin is now the senior responsible officer for this piece of work. It is an enormous piece of work. We've also got Hilary Wickett, who is our programme manager, and she is now in place, and she joined us in October. The introduction of that as a structure to the programme was absolutely key and important, because then all the foundations could be put in place in order to sort of drive this work forward. It is a complex piece of work because there are a number of education programmes that we need to deal with. The timescale is quite extensive as well, in terms of how do we fit this in throughout the year, because there is a need for every one of those to have its own dedicated review. And what we've provided to you there is what programme assurance that we will put to each programme. And in one of the appendices you will see, the pro forma that we will go to as an internal document to make sure that each of the programmes have gone through that process. We have the involvement of a strategic education advisor, which will look at what is the current education provision, where do we need to be as a service across Wales, and therefore what improvements do we need to introduce as a result of that revised procurement of that education. So there's extensive pieces of work that we need to understand. And as I said, you've also got in there the overarching programme highlight report, which is in there, and you will see that it is currently at amber rating. And that's because we are currently reviewing what we call the approvals process. Because of the complexity of this programme and the different values of each individual programme, we are confirming as to what the governance arrangements are within HEIW in order to trigger procurement and going out to tender, and also what the approvals process is at the end. So I'm happy to take questions, but I will obviously bring Martin in as well, because I think he eats, lives and breathes this programme extensively. And a big thank you to him and the team, because this is a significant piece of work for HEIW.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. I think you summed it up really well. It's so I've been SRO of this, I think, probably for the last sort of 5-6 weeks, and it's been a lot of taking stock and ensuring those right building blocks are in place so that we can move forward with confidence, and that we can develop the right pro formas and information to provide you with the assurance. So that's what that education journey that Lisa described is about. We're also trying to nail down a robust pricing strategy so that we don't have to revisit that every single time. And we're in the process of the 250 odd programs of work that we currently deliver. We're bundling those up into much neater packages to go out to tendering on, and we will be considering those in the next project board. So we're busily sort of recalibrating certain things, but progressing things at pace that needs to be progressed.
Thank you.
So we're happy to take any questions at you, Ruth.
We have made quite a lot of progress since this committee met last in September in putting some of those arrangements in place. And I'm sure that has been very helpful and necessary. And when you think that we've got a large number of individual projects within this whole area of work, all of which are so different, none is the same as the other. And it just seems to me that moving this forward is going to really need fairly tight project management and also some careful control mechanisms in order to make sure that we deliver on time. So I think it would be helpful to have assurance that that is adequate for the job, or is it actually sufficient in order to be able to control that and some of the risks that are inherent in that.
So what I will say is that the programme board that we now have in place has representatives from key directorates across HEIW. It's not just the Education and Commissioning team. Effectively, we've got the programme managers in there as well as obviously workforce and communication and engagement is going to be a key part of that as well. Rhiannon is actually on the board with respect to finance, and all parties around that table. So, but that's not to underestimate that is the core programme board, but actually that's the hub. The spoke is actually even larger in terms of actually the engagement, which is the key with service, with HEIs actually, and with actually clinicians as well, as to what these programs need to be going forward. This is the great opportunity in order to shape actually what our education looks like going forward. It's no more, this is the opportunity of not buying off the shelf, it's actually getting that bespoke product to meet the needs of the services and obviously the patients actually in Wales. So I think actually what we've got in place now is actually a much more robust process than we did previously.
Yes. Martin? I've lost you, Martin.
Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, right.
Sorry, my fault.
You're right.
Just to add on to what Lisa was saying, as well as the project manager that's now in place, we're using Angela as a strategic education advisor, which with Angela Parry, which is really helpful. With me being the SRO, we can now use Chrissy as our sort of subject expert around post-registration education in a slightly different way. And I think the key will be, because as you point out, a lot of these bundles of work are very different, getting the right responsible officer under me to help us deliver this. So I think we've now really got the board and the management structure in place to deliver and support this work.
In terms of this committee's contribution at the moment, because we're seeing the start of the big programme, really. We're just off the starting line. But as time goes by, we will be receiving pre-tender proposals for approval to go forward to the board. So there will be a substantial rolling programme of receiving these as we move forward. And I think that's something that we need to acknowledge, and presumably that will be also written into our forward work programme.
Yes, Ruth, that's right. So what you will see, my recommendations for today is to note the governance arrangements that we've now got in place. The content of the report, which includes the programmes that are included, and there are more to come. Then note the action being taken to develop and agree the approval process, which will determine that programme of recommendation and approval. We're at the point at the moment, and obviously the programme assurance template, which I've attached. And then it's about noting the progress where we do report here that we are at the point of developing the healthcare support worker programme, and that will be considered in the closed part of this agenda in order that it can be recommended to go out to tender by the board. And that's our next step. And that will be the first on the journey.
I think we need to prepare for that. Is anybody else? Tina, have you got any comments or observations on this paper?
Ruth, I have. It's a bit of a difficult one, I think, from the point of view of the overview of the paper in terms of it. I'm just trying to find where it says the purpose of the paper, because I found it. It says high quality education training closely associated with patient safety. Mm-hmm. And it talks about patient safety is inseparable. And HEIW will seek assurance that education and training take place where patients are safe, the care and experience of patients is good. And that's a very, very huge agenda, given that we're not in contact with patients, but I think there's a lot to learn from the medical profession. And I just wonder whether pharmacy and dentists would actually have something to contribute about that quality and patient safety experience, because it says the legal implications, there are none. and yet I know of cases where training has taken place in an area where it's potentially been out of date, and then there has been legal agendas because safety hasn't been upheld, and there have been universities in the past that have had to finance some of those agendas, and I think that's a very, very big ask, and I don't know where to have that conversation, or whether that's implicit within the assurance that you get through the implementation of the contract. It's just the quality, safety and patient experience is a big ask, I think, and it's a difficult one to rationalize in terms of when you're trying to get the education experience right for students. How do you ensure that patients are not put at risk, and seek that assurance as a board? And I don't know what the answer is. I think it's a big ask.
But it is a responsibility on us actually to deliver good quality programme, actually, which deliver good patient care as well, which is patient safety, because that would be the area that we would be upholding. Tina, I don't disagree with you, but really it's actually implicit and incumbent on us all that whatever education and training we're doing, actually, that we don't actually aim to sort of, bring harm to patients.
Yeah, I get that, and I've identified, but measures and the quality measures that's the issue for me. And if you're able to come up with those, I think that would be a huge leap forward. I'm not saying that, I think in some areas we're potentially asking the impossible in terms of meeting all that. I don't know what other members of the board think, It's just a tall ask, I think.
I think, yes, it is a tall ask, but sorry, is that somebody? I'm putting across somebody. No, it is a tall ask, but I think it's a very valid question. Margaret, what are you thinking?
I might be being very simplistic here, but I think if utilising the quality framework that we have in HEI, which clearly articulates all the different aspects of quality when we come to consider quality assurance, management, planning, etc. We found that framework really helpful to frame what is it, where is HIW's accountability or responsibility within that framework, and using that framework to look at all the pieces of work we do. And in some parts we'll be doing everything, and other parts we'll just be doing some of the quality planning. So I'm just suggesting that maybe, I know this is a complex piece of work, but if we have clearly articulated where our role fits in to that framework within this piece of work, it might help us, or help Tina and others, to understand actually what are we doing in that space, and how are we held accountable or legally responsible to deliver that part of the quality, because it is a big agenda, but you've got to be very clear which bit of it we're accountable for and responsible for, so we don't get caught out.
Tom, have you got any reflections on this issue?
I think Margaret's general points I would concur with, really. I think it's been very clear on responsibilities within that framework, isn't it, and what we're leading on and what we're not. And I think it does help us with that aspect. But other than that, I don't have any other specific thoughts at this point. They're important questions to answer, aren't they?
Margaret's suggestion of thinking of it within the framework, because I think it's a very practical and sensible one, and maybe one that we could build in as we're going to be taking this forward, aren't we?
I think the framework gives you the language, the tools, and it defines where the responsibilities are. So it keeps things in the compartments where they're supposed to be, I guess, is what we're saying, isn't it?
Yes, because actually we are responsible for commissioning of the education, and therefore our quality assurance framework is how we actually aspire to achieve that.
Well, there's a potential way forward. Whether it would be easy to take that route or not is another matter. But thank you for raising it, Tina. It's an interesting issue. Lisa, thank you for bringing the paper. We acknowledge this is at the start, but we will look forward to walking alongside this as the products emerge. And they're already starting to, so we will no doubt be coming back to that very shortly.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you. So let's move to part 6 now, which you will see is any other business. So does anybody have anything else that they would like to raise here? No? We note the date of our next meeting, which is on the 3rd of March. And it will again, I think almost inevitably, but be by Zoom or by technology. So with that, I will I'll close the open part of this meeting and thank all those who've contributed, and particular thanks to those who've put the papers together for the meeting in what I know were quite difficult times and challenges of all sorts. So thank you especially to them. We'll leave this meeting now, and those of us who are joining in committee, I think we have to rejoin, do we? Does anybody?
Yes, we do. So we'll need to go back into the diary, and there's the in-committee connection, which is a Teams link. If you could click onto the Teams link.
Right. Thank you. So see those of you shortly.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Thank you.